শুভ সন্ধ্যা সবাইকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি আজকের আলাপচারিতায়। আজকের আলাপচারিতায় আমরা বিষয় হিসেবে যুক্তরাজ্যের রাজনীতিকে বেছে নিয়েছি। কেমন আপনারা নিশ্চয়ই জানেন যে আজকে সুগ্রে যে রিপোর্টটি বের হয়েছে সেখানে আমাদের প্রধানমন্ত্রী বরিস জনসন এবং তার অফিস 10 ডাউনিং স্ট্রিট কোভিড রুলিং ভঙ্গ করেছেন কি করেছেন না সে ব্যাপারে তার রিপোর্টটি প্রকাশিত হয়েছে এবং সে নিয়ে আমাদের আজকের আলোচনা। Viewers, I'm sure you know that Sue Gray's report, long-awaited Sue Gray's report, in terms of whether our Prime Minister and his office, 10 Downing Street, whether they have breached the COVID ruling or not. And we have been waiting for this report, and we saw that this afternoon Sue Gray's interim report has been published. And to talk about this report and the impact of that report, whether the Prime Minister should stay or not, whether we have got the confidence on the Prime Minister in terms of his integrity, whether he can actually lead the country, and talk about these issues. We have got four panel members we have got with us at the moment, and we will talk about this issue. And obviously we have got representatives from three parties, and we have got a political analyst with us. So before we start the discussion, let me introduce my panel members, and then we will start the discussion. And obviously, viewers, you'll be able to join us directly in the discussion by calling the studio number, or you'd also be able to watch the program on Facebook Live on ATN Bangla UK website. So let me introduce my panel members. We have got Unmesh Desai, GLA member and representing Labour Party. Welcome to the show, Unmesh. Then we have got Momshed Mahfuz, representing Conservative Party. I'm sure you can understand that he's in the hot seat today. We have got, thank you Momshed for joining us. We have got Michael Robinson. He's the Executive Committee member for Tower Hamlets Lib Dem Committee. Welcome to the show, Michael. And last but not least, we have got Dr. Zakir Rezwana Anwar, political analyst, and she has been observing and monitoring this issue quite closely for last couple of weeks. So thank you, Dr. Anwar, for joining us in the panel. So we will start with our panel members asking you the same question, because obviously we know that this is a initial report presented or published by Sue Gray, who is a civil servant. It was said that we do have quite a lot of confidence on the report or the investigation that she will be undertaking. It looks like that this is quite a challenging report for Sue Gray, because obviously much of the details she could not publish because the police is already investigating on this issue. But the initial findings from her reports are, for her report is failure of leadership in number 10 and cabinet office, serious failure to observe high standards expected from the office, excessive alcohol consumption, and behavior difficulties to justify. These are really serious issues raised about 10 Downing Street as well as the Prime Minister. I would like to start with Unmesh. What's your initial take on that?
Well, firstly, I mean, as I said over the weekend, that this situation is now beyond a joke. It's becoming farcical. We started with the Met Police saying they're not going to investigate because they don't investigate retrospective offences. Then they say we're waiting for Sue Gray's report. Then in response to my question at the police committee of the London Assembly last week, they said, yes, we are going to investigate. 48 hours later, they qualify that by calling upon Sue Gray to say that they wanted minimal references in her report in terms of the parties that are being that she was investigating. So that left me baffled. What happened in the intervening 48 hours where she was so unequivocal before us on Wednesday last week that she was going to investigate, or Tuesday last week that she was going to investigate without any caveats, and then 48 hours later calling upon the police, calling upon Sue Gray to have minimal references to the Met's investigation. We now have the Sue Gray report, but obviously heavily sort of caveated because of the restrictions requested offer by the Met police. I mean, I would say there was no legal basis for the Met to make such a request anyway. It was a request. So, as far as I'm concerned, now look, there's two things. Firstly, because the Met police investigation, and it's very important that this investigation is concluded as quickly as possible. The public out there want answers. We can't have lawmakers being lawbreakers.
Thank you, Unmesh. I'll come to you. I'll come to you. So I've heard your.
COVID. And finally, I'll finish on this note.
Okay.
On the Sugri report, the failure of leadership has got to be at the doors of Downing Street, the Prime Minister. Buck cannot be passed to the head of the Cabinet Office. It's a political failure of leadership.
Thank you. Michael, I think as Unmesh already kind of pointed, two words I would like to bring to your attention in this initial report: failure of leadership at the Cabinet and 10 Downing Street office, and serious failure to observe high standards expected. So these two particular words, leadership, failure in leadership, and serious failure in terms of the standards that is expected of 10 Downing Street, as well as from the Prime Minister, the leadership. What's your take on this initial report? Was it something that you were expecting to come out?
Well, I don't think anybody is surprised by this. Remember how this all started. On the 8th of December, somebody leaked to ITV video of Allegra Stratton, the press secretary for Boris Johnson, unable to answer a simple question posed by Special Advisor Ed Oldfield as they rehearsed a press conference. Ed Oldfield asked, would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party? Allegra Stratton answered, after laughing nervously, what's the answer? And Ed Oldfield said, I don't know. So these are people whose responsibility it is to protect and propagate the credibility of the Prime Minister. And they had no answer for the simple question, would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party? They know they couldn't answer the question no, because there was evidence. We know that the Metropolitan Police have evidence that reaches the threshold for a criminal investigation. They were clearly aware of that. And they couldn't answer that question yes, because that would be political suicide. Everything that's happened since then has been kicking this into the longer and longer grass. In Prime Minister's questions that day, Boris Johnson said, I've asked the Cabinet Secretary to establish all the facts and report back as soon as possible. As soon as possible. If rules were broken, there will be disciplinary actions for all involved. That's what he said. He was kicking that in the grass. We weren't supposed to have the Sue Gray report. We were supposed to have the Simon Case report. Why didn't we have the Simon Case report? Well, that grass wasn't long enough. It turns out he was having parties. So then they kicked it into the Sue Gray report. But that grass wasn't long enough either. Now it's in the Metropolitan Police. We are now in the absurd situation where the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, our Prime Minister, is under investigation for 8 separate events that rise, according to the Metropolitan Police, to the threshold for criminal investigation. And that's good news for him because it's keeping the information from coming out. Just by itself, that is evidence that he is not fit to be leading the country, not fit to be leading the Conservative Party.
Michael, we'll come back to you. Dr. Zakir, Rezwana, Anwar, coming back from Unmesh and Michael, we know that there are 16 incidents or gatherings reported by Sue Grays, and out of the 16, 12 will be investigated by the police, because we understand that 12 would meet the remit of police investigation. And out of those 12, one incident definitely where Prime Minister himself was present, but we understand that when questioned, the incident in relation to 13th of November 2020, he said there was no party, but according to Sue Gray's report, there was a party, and that party actually took place in the Prime Minister's own accommodation. What is your initial take on this report and what has been happening since this afternoon, whether the Prime Minister loses his credibility, whether he should be responsible for this significant failure that Sugre is pointing out, excessive alcohol consumption in the Prime Minister's office, and significant failure on the leadership. So what's your initial take on this report, and how do we as general people see the Prime Minister and his office in terms of being responsible, liable and credible to run the country? Zakir, you have to unmute yourself. Thank you. No, we still can't hear you, Dr. Anwar, so I think you need to make sure that you unmute. I think, Dr. Anwar, you need to check. We can't still hear you. Let me go to Momshed, and we'll come back to Zakir and Rezwana Anwar whilst she's sorting out her microphone. Momshed Mahfuz, if I come to you, obviously you have heard from Michael and Unmesh. This has been pretty disappointing. It looks like quite a disgrace for the Prime Minister as well as his office. A Prime Minister who made the rule and then breached the rule and then claimed that he did not know what the rulings were, and then now he said to the public today and to the House of Parliament that he accepts. He said sorry, accepts all the findings from Sugre's report, and he said, I know, and I am going to fix it. So is that going to be enough? I'm going to fix it. So are we, or should we, as general people, be satisfied with his comments after all this time, all those positions, all those times where he has been saying, no, nothing has been broken, we've been okay, and there's no wrongdoing on my part or the 10 Downing Street's part, and now he's saying, I'll fix it.
Sure. I think you ask very important and pertinent questions. The important thing to remember, this report was commissioned by the Prime Minister's office and the Cabinet office. So
he was
both
forced.
of these entities
He was forced.
if I could just finish. So they co-sponsored this report, headed up by a very respectable civil servant. Now, as you know, the report has been redacted to a large extent to accommodate the ongoing investigation led by the Met Police. Of the 16 incidents Sue Gray investigated, 14 are now under investigation by the Met Police. So obviously we have to be careful, those of us who are in the public domain, to conduct the debate in such a way it doesn't prejudice an ongoing investigation. So that is the first point to make. Now, in terms of leadership failure, yes, I definitely would concur with that. To an extent, there was a leadership failure, but it was also a collective failure, both by the Prime Minister's office and by the Cabinet office. And it's a collective responsibility everyone has to own up to. And I don't think you can squarely put the whole thing on the Prime Minister's feet, because the Prime Minister is not responsible for the day-to-day running of his office or the Cabinet office. You have Cabinet officers, high-ranking civil servants, ministers there to make sure that the rules are adhered to. Yes, of course, there was some misgiving on the Prime Minister's part, and he has wholeheartedly owned up to his own personal failures, whether or not that warrants the Prime Minister to consider his position.
Sorry, Momshed, can I just stop you for 2 minutes? Because you said that he has wholeheartedly accepted the responsibility, but he actually said that there was no party and he wasn't involved in a party and there was no party in his own flat. But there was a party on 13th of the November 2020, and that was in own house. So do you actually believe or feel that there was a true acceptance or taking responsibility for his behavior? Because you said, he wholeheartedly, apologized to the country. Is that true? Do you feel that?
If you listen to the Prime Minister and his statement from the dispatch box, I don't think the Prime Minister was trying to circumvent, his own misgiving in this whole saga. He has been quite open and candid in his acceptance in his own failures. And don't forget, many of the Conservative Member of Parliament have serious misgivings on this. So it's not as though this is something
Momshed, do you agree that the report also says there was too little thought given to what has been happening across the country in considering the appropriateness of some of these gatherings? So do you actually accept that there is a clear disconnect between what's happening with the Prime Minister and his 10 Downing Street versus what was happening out across the country, where people are losing their loved ones, not being able to attend their funeral, not being able to hold their hands at the last point of their life, and people going through significant amount of emotional trauma, whilst Downing Street is actually having parties after parties after parties 16 times. Do you think there is a disconnect that has been identified in Sue Gray's report? Do you accept that? Just yes or no?
Well, no, I don't think a binary response through yes or no will suffice in this instance. You will have to allow me to.
Okay, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. So your answer is not yes. Your answer is not no. But my question was clear with this evidence that I've given you, whether you can see there's a clear disconnect between what's happening out there and what's happening with the rest of the people who reside in United Kingdom. We will talk about Zakir. We'll come to Dr. Zakir Rezwana Anwar. Dr. Anwar, I would like to have your initial thoughts on in terms of the report that's been published today. I know you've been following this issue quite closely.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah?
We can, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So basically the thing is, as I said, I was saying that this is not a full report anyway because of the police intervention. It's a 12-page report. Still, whatever is there, it's nothing new. It was all expected. So basically what Boris Johnson has been trying from the very beginning that Boris Johnson is trying to buy time for many reasons. Number one is because Boris, if he gets some time, he can do two things. One is if when the medical institute happen and their report, it will take like months, couple of months. So you will buy some time over there. And the thing is, if you can buy time, so people will forget about the hard date. And meanwhile, the one major thing we do not discuss, it's not coming on the surface, but I think which is quite dangerous. Which in 2011, remember we had the Trump parliament when the coalition government, Tory and Lib Dem. So to keep the Lib Dem, we had the fixed term parliament, and that government, this current government, they are trying to repeal the whole act and what is called the Dissolution and Calling of the Parliament Act, which means that has been passed in Parliament and it is in the House of Lords now. So soon if it gets the royal assent, then it will be a law. When the Prime Minister can go to the public and say, and ask for votes and you can declare the election. If you can remember, a couple of days ago, this mob said to the flag elections, the Red Ball MPs, that actually that was a kind of threatening. And he was saying that if you have your new leader, you have to have a general election, which is not normal because we have seen many prime ministers, they have entered number 10 without having immediate general election. For example, Theresa May, Gordon Brown, John Major. So, but the thing, this is a message that Boris Johnson and his mob want to give to the Red Ball MPs that, okay, if you submit your letters, vote of no confidence, then you will lose your seat. So basically, what Boris Johnson is trying to do is three things. One is he wants people to forget about this Partygate. Number two, meanwhile, people show that he is concentrating on the big issues like Ukraine attack and other things.
Dr. Anwar, we will thank you for your comments so far. We'll come back to you. We'll have to go for a short break. Panel members, stay with us. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be back soon, and you can join via the telephone or watch live on Facebook. We'll be back shortly after the short break. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back to the show. We are talking about the report that's been published this afternoon by Sue Grace, and talking about whether the Prime Minister and his office, 10 Downing Street, has breached the COVID ruling. We have on the panel Unmesh Desai from Labour Party, Momshed Mahfuz from Conservative Party, Michael Robinson, Lib Dem, and we have got Dr. Zakir, Rezwana, Anwar as political analyst. Unmesh, I would like to come back to you. Obviously this afternoon, to respond to the report, Prime Minister had said, I'm sorry for the things, we simply didn't get it right, I'm sorry for the way this matter has been handled, I get it and I'll fix it. However, the report clearly talks about significant failure in the leadership, and also talks about the disconnect between the country and 10 Downing Street. It talks about political deafness. I mean, what's your take on it in terms of do we believe that the Prime Minister will be able to fix it while he remains in power, whilst he remains responsible for the office that has been projecting significant failure through a very, very sensitive time from 2019 to 2020? What's been your take, Unmesh? Have we lost? Yeah.
Hi. The report is absolutely spot on in talking of the disconnect between our lawmakers and the public out there. Look, let's not forget the people, thousands who died. People could not go to the funerals of their loved ones. And here we have people partying in the heart of Westminster in open defiance of the rules, flagrantly. You know what? They got caught out. That's what they are concerned about. They thought they would get away with it. They couldn't care a damn about the public out there. And that is why I think people are so livid and so angry. And that's why the report is absolutely spot on to talk about a disconnect. Let's be very clear.
Okay, let me stop you for 2 minutes, Unmesh. Hold on. So there is an argument. People are saying, okay, he breached the law, COVID ruling, right? Give him a penalty fine. And the findings from Sue Gray's report about leadership, about excessive alcohol, and also very importantly, number of people have actually wanted to report this, that these wrongdoings that was happening at 10 Downing Street, but they didn't feel that they were able to. So all these serious allegations or concerns raised by Sue Gray's report, put it one side, give him a fixed penalty fine, and he's sorted because he knows how to fix it.
It's more than fixed penalty fines, Urmee, and this is where the police have got questions to ask. What were the police officers on duty inside Downing Street and outside doing, for a start? Why did Boris Johnson, if as my Conservative colleague says, that he may not have known what's going on? It's not a big building. He has actually been pictured in these parties. What the serious situation here is, that why did it take him so long to get Sue Gray to ask to do an inquiry? And the issues that we raised in Parliament, has he been misleading the public? Has he been misleading Parliament? These are the serious issues that confront us. So it's more than just the issue of simply issuing fixed penalty notices.
Michael, same question to you. I mean, obviously, we have Conservative backbenchers raising concerns. Theresa May said today that whether Boris Johnson knows what were the rules were, and whether he accepts that either he didn't know what the rules were or he did know that he was breaking the rules. We also have some other senior backbenchers saying that Boris Johnson no longer have the privilege of their friendship. And all we need is at the moment 54 backbenchers to say, actually, we do not have the confidence on the Prime Minister, let him go. Also, another backbenchers made the comment that as backbenchers, we know how to dispose of a leader who is not performing or failure leadership. So these are very, very serious comments that's coming from the backbenchers, but at the same time, there is also a view that they want to wait till the full police investigation is concluded. And we understand that 10 Downing Street has confirmed that once the police investigation is done, Sue Gray's full report will be published. So what's your take? Are they going to wait for all this investigation to be completed? They will allow all this kind of uncertainty to continue, or they're going to say enough is enough, we'll let him go and then we move on? Because don't forget, we have got the Ukraine issue, we have got the inflation issue, we have got the high energy bill issue, we have got the cost of living shooting up like anything. So all these issues that the country has to deal with, but at the same time, if this issue is not addressed, we will be toing and throwing from this end to others. So what's your take on it? What do you think the backbenchers will do?
Well, I don't know what they will. I don't know what they will do. I think this is the exact correct question, though, because this is not, in my view, a question of Boris Johnson's character. I think anybody who has followed his career over the years knows exactly what his character is. I don't think this should come as a surprise to anybody, both the violations of the COVID rules and the attempts to cover it up since. I think this is a question of the character of the Conservative MPs. Boris Johnson is the horse that they rode to an 80-seat majority. And obviously, they are concerned about their electoral prospects in the next general election, and they are stuck. Are they going to hope that Boris Johnson's charm and bon vivant kind of way with the public is going to get them through the next election, or is he going to be a liability? And I think that's a calculation they're making right now. They're not actually asking a character question, with the possible exception of Theresa May. They are making a calculation. Is Boris Johnson going to be more of an asset or a liability in the next general election? And if it looks like he's going to be more of a liability, they will move against him. And if it looks like he will be more of an asset, they will keep him. And it's all of the character issues, all of the integrity issues, all of the credibility issues that you're talking about, I don't think are factoring in the mind of the majority of the Conservative MPs. They're just thinking, looking at their inbox, at their email from their constituents, trying to judge, is he an anchor or is he somebody that's going to be able to help get them through, get their seat back in the next general election?
Thank you, Michael. I'll come back to you. Momshed, if I can ask you the same question in terms of what we have in relation to the Prime Minister at the moment. Sorry? Unmesh, I'll come to you. I'll come to you. But Momshed, I would like to put to you, in terms of the Prime Minister who has got this allegation against him that he deliberately lied possibly to the House of Parliament, saying that he wasn't involved or there wasn't a party in his apartment or in his flat. Yes, there was a party. That's in line with Sue Gray's report. We have a Prime Minister who knew about the Islamophobia in his party, but possibly deliberately ignored it or didn't take much or didn't put much weight to that. We have a Prime Minister who we have evidence to suggest that he ordered or authorized evacuation of animals from Afghanistan when actually human beings were left behind. We have a Prime Minister whose leadership has been significantly challenged by Sue Gray's report, an independent report that he claimed that is as independent as possible. A Prime Minister who is now subject to police investigation. And in terms of the world politics, how he is being viewed as a Prime Minister subject to police investigation, and the incidents that police is actually investigating is 12 in numbers. So where do you think the party is actually standing at this very moment? Whether they're going to, as Michael said, is he a liability, or party believes that he's somebody who will be able to lead them through the next election or lead the country? Momshed, unmute yourself, please.
Apologies.
Yeah,
the first point to make, and I'll try and address all the points you raised through your question. So the first question is the Prime Minister personally responsible for what unfolded before us and what we know through the Sue Gray's report? You also mentioned that he's subject of Met Police investigation. That is not correct. He personally is not subject of a criminal investigation or any investigation per se.
He would be, Momshed, because the incident that happened in his flat,
If I could just articulate my sentiment, because otherwise your viewers are going to be none the wiser in terms of the views of the other side. The Prime Minister has not been investigated on a personal level. Incidences are being investigated, of which, of course, the Prime Minister is framed within the wider scope. So it is somewhat misleading to say the Prime Minister himself has been subjected to a criminal investigation by the Met Police. No, the Prime Minister's office involving these 14 alleged parties, which Sue Gray's report was alluding to. So that's the first thing to note. The other thing you mentioned about whether or not the Prime Minister has the confidence of the nation at large and the Conservative Party, I would say, as a humble activist, he does have my support and support of the wider Conservative base. And the reason for this is simple. It's much easier to resign than to stay the course and see it through. The test of character, the strength of leadership is how you respond to an adverse situation. Look at the way the Prime Minister has navigated us out of what everyone would agree was the biggest, pandemic since the Spanish flu, and he managed to steer this country out of an abyss, both economically and from a public health standpoint. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say the Prime Minister didn't make any mistakes. Of course he did. He's human. He's not infallible, just like any of us sitting here discussing this topic this evening. But I think the important thing is that he has recognized there's been failures from the Prime Minister's office and the Cabinet office.
Thank you, Momshed. Thank you. I think we got the gist. We got the gist. Thank you. We have got a caller, and then I'll go to Dr. Zakir Rezwana. Caller, who is on the line? Assalamu alaikum. Hello, who is on the line, caller? I think we have lost the caller. Dr. Zakir Rezwana, a clear question to you. Do you think, because obviously Prime Minister has said, I got it and I'll fix it. Do we believe that knowing all this kind of lack of leadership, lack of very disconnect behavior that's been taking place in 10 Downing Street, including excessive amount of alcohol consumption, which was identified as a concern by Sue Gray's report, do we believe that Prime Minister will be able to fix this significant challenge whilst he is still responsible for 10 Downing Street? I'll come to you, Dr. Anwar. Just we have got a caller. Let me take the question and then I'll come to you. Hello, caller. Who is on the line?
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
আমার একটা কোয়েশ্চন, আপনার স্টুডিওতে একটা জেন্টলম্যান জাস্ট আই থিংক হি ইজ এ টরি অ্যাক্টিভিস্ট, উনি কি জানেন হোয়াট ইজ পুলিশ ক্রিমিনাল ইনভেস্টিগেশন? I am a retired judge. I do understand what is police criminal investigation. Investigation means you are guilty, no matter who you are.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm absolutely right. Law is for everyone, no matter whether the Prime Minister...
This gentleman totally don't understand.
Thank you. I'm sure he does. Thank you, caller. Thank you for your call. So, Dr. Anwar, the question to you, do we have the confidence that he will be able to fix it while he remains in power and in control of the office?
This is what we have been seeing for the last few days and weeks, that he is trying to portray the problem is as a collective problem, collective responsibility. But at the end of the day, he's in charge of it. And so he is the responsibility. He has got the responsibility. You can't say it's a collective responsibility. That's one thing. And let me make it clear that there is no more at all. You know that he has breached the rules. Even all the parliaments of the Tory MPs, they know as well. The question is, this will, and now today, if you have seen today's parliament session, he said that just wait for the police report. So what will happen after a few weeks or months? But the police will say that, okay, you have got, like this, it's like a speeding car, you will get the fine and everything will be fine. Fundamental problem is here when you have two institutional corruption. One is in the police office, police, and another one is in the administration. And previously, Boris Johnson said President did job in many times because there are lots of problems with our Met Police. And now I think it's hard time to say Prime Minister's job. And you have seen what history tells us in the last 40, 50 years. All the Prime Minister, Tory Prime Minister, they resigned for any reason. Each and every one was Europe issue. This is the first time Boris Johnson is something behavioral issue, the contract issue. So basically, what I am thinking as a neutral person from one side, departure of Boris is not a question of if, it's a question of when. But I think one of your guests was saying that the MPs are making calculations. It's not that they are calculating if they get the support from the public. So what there's another thing is the May election is coming up. So the new Tory Labour, they don't want because they will do poorly. No doubt about it in May election. So they are nobody wants to take the responsibility. No leader doesn't want to take the responsibility. Doesn't want to take the blame. So I think the time will pass. I mean, for the short term, it looks okay for Boris Johnson, but long term, these days are numbered. And the thing is, after May's election, then people will have, all the MPs will have a solid ground that, okay, with this leader, we can't win the general election. And you know, Tory leadership contest is very easy. I mean, it's much more easier than the left one.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anwar.
They will keep the leader as long as they will know that we can win the victory.
Unmesh, coming to you, I mean, internationally, where do we stand when we have got, Ukraine issues literally on our doorstep? We are really concerned, and constituents are actually saying that where does our army stand in terms of ensuring that their safety is being looked at, that the whole Ukraine and Russia issue is being addressed properly with real, through a thought-through process, versus when the Prime Minister and his office is subject to these significant concerns about leadership questioning, alcohol, excessive alcohol consumption, people are not being able to, talk out, people are not being able to speak out about the concerns in terms of what's happening down in the street. This is quite unprecedented for British politics in terms of where do we stand in the grounds of international politics when our Prime Minister could be actually fined for having a party in his own flat whilst COVID regulations was in place. In terms of our credibility as a nation?
I think these are very fair questions. It's not exactly a great advertisement, is it, for a political system worldwide? Look, Boris Johnson has eroded our democracy and the rule of law, and he's made us a laughing stock around the world. But also, can I just say, this is a very important point. He has not promised to provide us with a full Sucre report in due course. All he has said is he will give an update. An update is very different to having the full report published. That is what we want. And we want the police inquiry to be concluded as quickly as possible so we can get to the bottom of what has now become a farce and a joke. Worldwide, it's not doing us any good. It's not, it's a bad impression. Him sort of talking about, the cakeish party. Well, that wasn't a party. They're getting into definitions of parties and so on. What it should have done was, instead of vacillating, instead of prevaricating, instead of obfuscating, instead of blustering, you should have actually come clean, call the police in straight away. You have to be forced into getting to the Sucre inquiry.
Thank you. Michael, do you accept that we should be looking at, or there should be a collective failure on Downing Street rather than failure of the leadership? As Momshed was saying, that there is a collective failure rather than the Prime Minister who should be held solely responsible or predominantly responsible for this failure, because at the end of the day, it's his office and he's the leader.
Well,
Sorry, Michael, apologies, Michael, I'll have to come back to you after the short break. Stay tuned with us, Darshak. We are coming back after the short break. Thank you. Michael, coming back to you, the question I put to you just before the break. Michael Robinson, Executive Committee Member for Town Hamlets, Lib Dem, and we also have Unmesh Desai from Labour Party. We have got Momshed Mahfuz from Conservative Party, and we have got Dr. Zakir Rezwana Anwar as political analyst. Michael, going back to the answer.
Yes, the question you asked before the break,
Michael,
I think,
unmute,
is exactly the...
please. That's fine, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, the question that you asked before the break, I think, is exactly the right question, although maybe not in the way that you thought. I feel sorry for the Downing Street operation and the Conservatives who continue to back Boris Johnson, because they want us to believe two things. They want, on one hand, for us to believe that the Downing Street operation is too complicated, the lines of control are too blurry, it's too many people coming and going, and it's just not reasonable for Boris Johnson to be able to solve the problem of constant recurring illegal office parties. But on the other hand, they want us to believe that we shouldn't be distracting the Prime Minister from the very important business of working on the problem of a potentially imminent invasion of Ukraine by Russia. We shouldn't distract the Prime Minister from dealing with the issue of increasingly painful consumer inflation. We shouldn't distract the Prime Minister from the energy crisis that we're facing. So they would have us believe that these problems are easier to solve than somehow preventing the Downing Street staff from constantly breaking lockdown rules. Which is it? Is Boris Johnson the person who is going to lead the country through these crises that we're facing because of his great managerial ability and leadership? Or is he the guy that just doesn't really know what's going on downstairs and can't be expected to? Which is it?
Question to Momshed. So which is it, as Michael rightly put to us and put to you?
Yeah, sure. Well, the evidence is very clear. Has the Prime Minister not steered this country out of an economic and public crisis to the public health? He has managed to do that, and the economy is relatively stronger than any of the other advanced nations. Yes, we had to open the purse string to keep the businesses afloat, which was the right thing to do. Through a mixture of various initiatives, whether that was in the form of furlough schemes or bounce back loans, putting the restrictions in to ensure the COVID was not running riot. Yes, of course, many, tens and thousands of people lost their loved ones before their time, and they didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye or read them their last rites, and that's painful for me as a human being sitting here discussing these perilous events. And I take no joy from this, and I've always said, as an individual, hindsight is a wonderful thing. We can always look back on things and say, it should have been done this way and that way. But I genuinely do believe the Prime Minister did, the things he did and the decisions he took, which he obviously has to live by, and that is, one of the responsibility that comes when you hold the highest office of the land, second to the Queen. And I don't believe for one second, he has ever run away from that responsibility. But through it all, we really haven't seen any kind of leadership coming out of the Labour Party. If you appraise the Labour leadership, his policy stance has been one of flip-flopping.
I think, Momshed, sorry to stop you. I think you're taking us through a journey that at this very moment we agree that something really positive had happened in the past, but the question from Michael was very clear, because you were saying earlier that you were talking about collective responsibility rather than responsibility taken, or PM being responsible, because at the end of the day that's his office and he is responsible for the leadership. Because Sue Grace's report is very clear that the behavior that was projected by the staff at the 10 Downing Street was actually a public health risk. So that's one significant point. Second point is, as Michael rightly pointed, are we saying that this is a collective responsibility and we are actually excusing the PM out of it? Or we are saying that this PM, who is also responsible for taking us through a very serious journey of addressing Ukraine issue, the economic issue that we are going to face, and the increase power, increase electric kind of the inflation, cost of living, economy being significantly challenged. At the same time, we are also expected to believe that he did not know what was happening downstairs. So that was the question. So I think I'm sure you're trying to take us through a path that at this very point we are not convinced.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that, I don't think the report, including the Prime Minister himself, has absolved himself of personal responsibility. This was an investigation into the Prime Minister's office and the Cabinet office. And also important to note that it was sponsored by the Prime Minister himself. And if he wanted to hide behind curtains, he certainly wouldn't have taken that initiative. I don't think for a minute his hands were forced. Now, we could sit here and argue until the cows come back. But one thing important to remember, who would you rather have behind the steering wheel, taking this country out of the COVID crisis, facing up to Russia through what could be a potential flashpoint? It's certainly not the proposition the Labour have at the moment. Do you genuinely believe that Labour are in a position to govern this country?
Okay, let me put that question to Unmesh.
Believe so.
Thank you, Momshed. Let me put that question to Unmesh, and then I'll come to Dr. Anwar. Unmesh, do you think Labour is ready to take over the responsibility on the wheel at the moment?
We certainly are. And look, I don't want to move away from the crux of tonight's debate, but the defection of the Conservative MP for Barry South just tells you the extent of the mess that the Conservative Party is in. He feels that the Conservative Party does no longer represent the constituents, the so-called red wall seats who elected him. We are not in power. The Conservatives are in power. So let me concentrate on the person who's meant to be making decisions on our behalf. This crisis, whatever you call it, is entirely of the government's own making. The fact is they got caught. They thought they would get away with it. It's the arrogance of power. Parties in the middle of Westminster. These parties were exposed by whistleblowers and by the media. Others, the government would have kept quiet. If they acted honestly, right from the beginning, they would not have found themselves in this mess. Which means that they've taken their eye off the ball in dealing with the cost of living crisis, Ukraine, and many other serious situations. And just let me say, my colleague talks about the great economic success of the government and so on. Inflation is at the highest level since 1992. Brexit we are still in a mess. Post-Brexit policy, supplies not coming in, and that's what the government's handling of COVID. I don't want to play party politics, but let us be clear about one thing. In many cases, far too many cases, the government's response was too little, too late. I'm talking about 2020. But getting back to the issue that we are talking about, the question of trust, of respect for our institutions, acting properly, and to avoid the perception of a cover-up. So that's why it's important that the Prime Minister actually authorizes the full release, only he can, of the Sue Gray report, unredacted, and the police complete the inquiries quickly and take them where the evidence is subdued. And if it notices or more, so be it. This is about restoring trust and confidence in our systems, in our institutions. It's a test the Prime Minister has failed miserably. I hope he doesn't deflect responsibility onto the head of the Cabinet Office. He's known for deflecting attention away when he's made a mess. His record at City Hall, he's well known for his ability to bluster his way out of things. He should show leadership and accept what was done is wrong and face the inevitable consequences of what's happened and step down.
Thank you, Dr. Zakir Anwar. I mean, as people of this country, should we be actually worried about this issue? We understand this issue is now going to continue until the police investigation is completed, and then people are expecting the full report of Sue Grace to come out, and then what's going to happen then. But at the same time, we also have, as I keep on saying, Ukraine issue, which is a very significant politics involving our security force going there. At the same time, inflation is high. Elderly people are struggling to manage their fuel bill, their energy bill. Cost of living is going high, so poor people, the deprived people are going to be even suffering more in the coming days, coming months. Whereas we are actually dealing with this issue, the Parliament, who are supposed to be dealing with all these important issues, now dealing with whether the Prime Minister should be given a penalty notice or not, whether he breached the COVID ruling or not, whether we can trust him, whether we can have the confidence on him. How worried are you?
To answer your question, I think all of us need to ask ourselves a basic question. We all know that he has broken the rules, everything we know. There is no moral figure at all. We all know that. But have we asked the question that even after all this, why is he still here? He is here because he has the full support from Brexiteers. So the Brexiteers, they want Boris, they need or to complete the Brexit and everything. And the thing is, what I have noticed in the last 2 weeks is whenever Boris was asked about the moral issue to the Brexit rules, he was trying to diverge to the fact that we have the bigger issue as you mentioned about the Ukraine. So he was trying to portray that we can bring the NATO in close contact, and I can handle I will talk to Vladimir Putin about the international issues, I can handle the UK border. But the thing is, what I have noticed that there were plenty of opportunities where missed by Kerstin. Like 3-4 days ago, when there was a person, and Kerstin was again, he was the way he was talking to Boris Johnson. He was trying to kick the goalpost when there was no goalkeeper. This was the time to prove that show the leadership. It's not only pull down Boris Johnson. Okay, you can pull down Boris Johnson. What is after that? What we are going to do? So this was a time for Kerstin to show that this is our policy on international issues. This is our policy. So Brexiteers are very strong. I mean, they are thinking that if the power goes to Kerstin, then he will go to Brussels, and all the power will go to Brussels. So they are scared of this. That's why they need someone who can complete the Brexit settlements everywhere. So what Boris Johnson will do, he will not in the next days. He will fly to international border Ukraine. He will wear a helmet, and you have seen this morning. He went to somewhere where there was a building constructions, and he will show that the economic development is going up, and I can handle the international issues. So this is the time for Kerstin to show that this is my policy, and if you do this, then who will do this? So people want to know that what is your policy? So
thank you. Zakir, thank you very much. Our time is kind of running out pretty quickly. Michael, same question to you. should we be worried about the current political situation here, where, as I was saying to Dr. Anwar, on one hand we have got significant international political challenge with Ukraine and Russia. At the same time, the economy in this country, the inflation, the cost of living going high, the elderly people are struggling significantly with their gas bill and electricity bill, versus Parliament having a debate for the whole afternoon about having the confidence on the Prime Minister and his office. Should we be worried about this? And what's your future take? I mean, how do you envisage our coming days in terms of British politics? Which way are we heading?
Well, I think we should be worried about it. I think we should have been worried about it at the very moment that Boris Johnson suggested that he was going to challenge Theresa May for leadership of the party, and the subsequent driving out of many competent, qualified, conservative MPs from positions of responsibility. But I would like to take strong exception to the repeated claim that we should be grateful for Boris Johnson's leadership over the COVID crisis. In November 2020, he had a decision to make whether or not he was going to allow people to go home for Christmas. The scientists said it would be irresponsible for people to travel across the country and have parties and meet their family members. For political reasons, for political gain, as a political calculus, he decided to go forward with his everybody goes home and socializes for Christmas. That led to the single largest, most lethal wave of this pandemic, and tens of thousands of people are no longer with us as a result of that political calculation. Yes, I think that we have been in trouble with this government, with Boris Johnson's leadership, and where we are now is a deterioration, a further deterioration, and it's unfortunate that the country has to suffer through this.
Thank you. Momshed, same question to you. What do you envisage that's going to happen in days or months to come when we will have these two very strong issues going in parallel? On one hand, whether the Prime Minister should stay, at the same time we have got all these very, very important issues faced by the country. Unmute yourself, Momshed, please.
Apologies. We are part of nature and we have a collective responsibility to play our part. The development on the Ukraine front is very, very worrying. Russia is growing very belligerent by the day and not willing to play by the book. But, you know, to squarely face up to Russia, you need strong, consistent, robust leadership, the one that's not going to flip-flop and sway with the wind. And that leadership, certainly by all accounts and based on what we have seen so far, even through this crisis, is not Sir Keir Starmer. This was an opportune time for him to demonstrate to this country that he has what it takes to be an alternative to Boris Johnson, and he has failed spectacularly. Instead of looking at the greater good of the country, he has been towing the party political line and using this opportunity to score and build his political capital, which is quite characteristic of him if you look at his political career. He is a career politician, was a lawyer by trade, certainly not what you expect to see from a typical leadership, or if you compare him with all the other previous Labour leaders. And also,
Momshed,
look at
Momshed,
his.
sorry, I literally have 1 minute to go. So a question to you, finally. I mean, at the end of the day, Prime Minister, he's a human being. So on one hand, he has got this issue whether he's going to stay or not. At the same time, he has got the issue of dealing with Ukraine. So do you believe he has got the mindset at the moment to actually concentrate on those very serious international issues, including the economy, versus when he has got police on his doorstep investigating whether he's going to get a fine or not? Do you think he has got the right mindset at the moment, or can he actually have the right mindset as a human being?
Absolutely, there is not a shadow of doubt in my mind. He's the right man for the job to see us through this crisis. And, end of the day, we have to leave the judgment to the electorate. And if the Labour Party
absolutely, Momshed, thank you very much. I think we will have to leave that to the electorates who will have the ultimate decision, who is going to be in the decision to see whether he stays or not. But at the same time, thank you very much, all my panel members, for your contribution. Thank you, Unmesh Desai. Thank you, Dr. Zakir, Rezwana, Anwar. Thank you, Michael Robinson from Lib Dem. And finally, Momshed Mahfuz, thank you for your contribution from the Conservative Party. Thank you again. I'm inviting you to watch next week's Alapcharita. দর্শক, আগামী সোমবার Alapcharita দেখবার আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়ে শেষ করছি আজকের মতন। শুভরাত্রি।